Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer here, back in New York City. And of course, it's back to school time. It's September. The weather is glorious. I hate to say it, it reminds me whenever I come back here at this time of year of 9/11, when, of course, it was also just perfect. And then the worst thing imaginable happened to our city. Of course, at that point, despite the shock and the horror, it brought the city and the country together in ways that really did help emotionally and personally. That is not where we are today. And in fact, today, as we come back in September, the big news, the biggest news, is globally is not happening in the United States. The biggest news are the meetings going on in China. Massive military parade in commemoration of the end of World War II, and also the Shanghai Cooperation Organization with their largest ever meeting. What do we think about all of this? Well, we think that the United States is becoming less predictable, is becoming less reliable, at least in the eyes of non-American leaders around the world. And a lot of countries are hedging, and the Chinese in particular see this as an opportunity. They are the second most powerful country in the world, and they want to tell other countries that, well, whatever you think about the United States, the Chinese, over the long term, if we say we're going to do something, we stay committed to it. If we say we're going to be part of a multilateral organization, an agreement, a treaty, a deal, you can rely on us, Beijing, more than you can rely on the on again, off again, who knows what the president's going to say after an election or on a given day with a tweet. That is what China is trying to accomplish with their meetings in Tianjin. Now, on the back of all of that, how big is a change is this on the global stage? And I would say it matters, but there's both less and more of this than meets the eye. Less because these countries are not particularly aligned. NATO is a collective security agreement, and even if many allies of the United States don't trust the Americans the way they did a year ago or 10 years ago, ultimately there is still collective defense. There is intelligence sharing. There is defense mutual interoperability, all of that. That doesn't exist, not even close, in the SCO. India and China in particular are direct adversaries with major border challenges that they fought over, that people have died over just in recent years. And also they're fighting for influence on every geopolitical issue that matters to them in Asia. They're on, the other side of things like Pakistan and the Maldives and Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and Bhutan, you name it. China's on one side, India's on the other, and that's not suddenly going to get fixed. On the other hand, India does want to hedge away from their reliance on the United States, on Modi's perceived and to a degree real friendship established with President Trump during the first term. They're going to take a big hit to their GDP from the new US tariffs on India, probably 0.3 to 0.5% of their GDP growth. And there is a real rift, a personal rift between Modi and Trump, and that's why they've not spoken for a couple months now. Maybe they'll meet together here in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly meetings. I hope that comes about. But either way, it's not going to be the relationship that they had ex ante. And India wants to have good relations with everyone. They want to have functional economic relations with everyone. And that means being a larger, more public force with the Chinese, with the Russians at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And Trump is part of the reason for that. So I think that the upcoming meeting that's going to be scheduled by Brazil with all the BRICS in attendance on how to respond collectively to Trump's new tariffs, the highest level tariffs we've seen from the United States since the 1930s, more and less than meets the eye, less because the ability and willingness of these countries to actually coordinate economic policy is very low in reality, but more in that even absent that, they are all upset, distressed by massively increased tariffs from the United States, by unilateralism from the US. And they want to show that over time, they can diversify their trade, diversify their investments, their capital flows in ways that will expose them less to American unilateralism. And that latter point, which almost everyone in the world is now interested in, whether they're the Canadians or the Mexicans or the Europeans, or countries that are more adversarial, like many of those authoritarian regimes that are in the SCO, everyone is mutually interested in how can they protect themselves against the volatility, the unpredictability, and the unreliability of the United States. Now, a bunch of people will say, well, actually, unpredictability can be a positive thing against adversaries, because if you're always predictable, an adversary will take advantage of that. But if you're very powerful and you're unpredictable, then countries are going to have to be more careful in how they respond to you. And I agree with that. There is utility in that. But unreliability is a different matter. And when countries around the world see that the United States is not a country they can rely on, that whatever it says may not actually be the reality in a month, in a year, in a generation, well, those countries are going to make plans to a greater degree with those actors they feel they can rely on. That long-term does undermine America's power position globally, and it redounds to the greatest degree to China's benefits. Why? Because China is the second most powerful, but also because China has a system which is politically much more consistent over time. It is true that if the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party tells you that they're going to do something, they are less likely to suddenly undo that policy in a year or in 5 years. And historically, that's not something most people would have believed in. In part, that's been Xi Jinping's consolidation of power. That's the negative side. In part, it's been the United States on again, off again, whether it's diplomacy, trade, or security from one president to the next for a long time now. And President Trump, his second term, much more revolutionary, upsetting the apple cart and saying the US does not want to be the leader that it has been over the past decades. That's not been beneficial to the United States, and it's going to make up a very different set of rules. So that's where we are. It's a lot of change geopolitically. Very interesting time to be analyzing it. I'll be doing my best for you going forward. That's it for me. I'll talk to you all real soon.